The moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerfherder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Christina Yojimbo Henry. You can continue. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
So yeah, it feels like we've been away for quite a while. And I will tell you, Argylle, there was probably 50 people in my theater yesterday at the 1:45 showing.
Well, that's good. That's a good
I
thing.
was very impressed, and it was a mix of couples, and there was more than one or two groups of four, and then a bunch of old couples.
When we're recording this is in Argylle's second weekend.
Yeah, Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah, go Team Taylor Swift. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I don't care.
I did hear that she is going to make it from Japan.
Of course she is. She's gonna spew how many billions of dollars of jet fuel to make sure she's there.
Then when she inevitably writes the breakup song, one of the lines, "I flew from Japan for you."
I don't know. It depends on who you believe. This is all psyops anyways.
Yeah.
This is not a real romance.
What were we talking about? Oh, I don't even remember.
Vegas has over and unders. You can actually bet on how many times they show her on TV. You gotta love it. So, what are we talking about? Oh, Argylle. That's what we were talking about.
Yes, Argylle. Oh, yeah, the theater experience. It's only in its second weekend.
Yeah.
As of this recording. And of course, just like so much ephemera in pop culture, it seems like old news by now because the media at large is already dismissing it.
They've already written it off. It's a failure.
Yeah.
Apple TV bought themselves a clunker.
A turkey. And it doesn't help that most of the reviews have been negative on this. But are they deserving of
I don't know.
such negativity? We are going to discuss this. Talk it out. Do we have any news before we
do have news. Let's get into some news. Our backup feature, by the way, if you didn't see the title of this episode, is the Dark Half, which, as I mentioned last episode, I have no clue even existed. So, Jim, being the Stephen King aficionado, we'll get into that.
Yes, we will.
I thought it was a apt pairing.
Yeah.
When all was said and done.
Definitely. It's got that
writer angst.
The writer / character, what's reality and what's fiction.
Doppelganger.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on in either one of these movies. So, but yeah, let's do a little bit of news. We have to start by mentioning Carl Weathers, who passed away at 76. This is a bit of a shock because I know people who just met him like the week prior. This guy
he's doing conventions.
He's doing conventions. He's doing the meet and greet. He's pressing the flesh. He's signing autographs. He's taking photos with people. We just spoke last episode about Dave Filoni and Favreau making this Mandalorian and Grogu movie, and that Grief Cargo would probably play a big part in it. I will tell you that when I spoke with my son, the first thing out of his mouth, he's like, I didn't know that he was Apollo Creed. And I'm like, that is an epic parent fail on me that you did not know that.
It's so sad, too, that the Rocky series had to kill him off as early as
they did. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it does give the Creed movies some gravitas because, the loss of his father, but the actor's been alive all these years. Could have been in these movies.
Even a flashback, something.
Yeah.
What could have been kind of a thing. But yeah, I mean, you're also talking about, well, he was Dylan in Predator. Dylan, you old son of a, however that line goes. That is one of the iconic images that they show whenever they have like an in memoriam. Where
What?
those two, they're two massive arms coming
Oh,
together
when it says, "What's the
in the
matter? FBI have you pushing too many pencils?"
There you go. I knew you'd say. I also didn't realize he's Combat Carl in the Toy Story series.
Well, he's Action Jackson.
Action Jackson. He's
I saw that in the theater. That's a great movie,
that
Action
is a good
Jackson.
movie. So yeah, that's very shocking and very upsetting. Especially when we have guys 76 just doesn't seem that old anymore. Especially because I just keep creeping closer to it. It's
Yeah.
like, no, 76.
Is
No,
there,
it's only 20
yeah,
some years off.
there's an element of denial in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he didn't look at, I mean, listen, he does show his age, and yeah, Hollywood could remove some wrinkles, but
But to a large extent, he's still the same guy. You see
yeah,
him in The Mandalorian and you recognize him immediately,
apparently my son didn't.
Oh, well, yeah.
And
That's a generational problem.
that is, well, like I said, that's a parent fail right there. But even going back to the Super Bowl talk, he's doing a series of commercials with Gronkowski for FanDuel. So
Yeah, that's right. You are going to see him today.
We'll be
Yeah.
seeing him today. Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of Grief Cargo, we have to, and I'm assuming they're probably going to kill off that character. What are they going to do? Just say, oh, yeah, by the way, he's go hanging out in that moon with Cara Dune.
Yeah, that's all they have to do is just not mention him again, and then they
I
can get away with
know,
it.
but yeah. Well, speaking of Cara Dune, Gina Carano, I'm sure you saw this, has filed a lawsuit against Disney.
No, I didn't see this.
Oh, you haven't seen this?
No, I haven't.
Oh, yeah. Well, she wants her rollback in The Mandalorian. She has filed a lawsuit in California federal court alleging wrongful termination and discrimination. And she's also asking for Lucasfilm to reinstate her in the role of Cara Dune. Now, I don't know if you remember, but Lucasfilm fired her back in 2021 after some controversial social media posts. Who's bankrolling this? Mr. Elon Musk himself. He has gone on record. He was on record after he publicly promised to support users of X who claim to have faced discrimination for their social media posts on the platform. So she took him up on his offer, and he is bankrolling this lawsuit, stating that she is seeking vindication in her free speech rights, which is fine. I'm all for free speech. You have every right to say whatever you want on whatever platform. But as your employer, I also have every right to say, cease and desist, please stop. She didn't, and Lucasfilm fired her. So I find that very interesting. I don't know. If she gets her job back, would anybody be happy? And listen, she's out there doing these conventions as well. I mean, I love the character. I thought the character was fantastic.
Yeah, I agree.
And I can, to a certain degree, separate your job because she's making money. She's making money going to these conventions and signing Cara Dune pictures. They haven't stopped her from doing that because once Lucasfilm went underneath the Disney banner, they are very controlling about. I just read somewhere that Disney has forced Topps to stop with the sketch cards, which I used to work on, because a lot of these blanks were getting out in the world and people were drawing unsanctioned images of characters on their official product. So she's out there with official photos of her character from the set or on location or in, that she is signing. That's, to me, that's sanctioned. They're allowing that to happen. They're not shutting her down. So 41-year-old Juan Carlos Osorio, who was a rigger on the set of the upcoming Marvel series Wonder Man, has died. He fell. There was an accident. They're saying that he fell from the rafters. They weren't filming at the time, and the union is claiming that it was a structure failure. So I'm sure that there's going to be all kinds of lawyers and something involved in this as well. And you never want to hear about this stuff. It happens all too many times now. I mean, I could have made a list of people who've died on set. There is a GoFundMe fundraiser. They've got up to almost $150,000 to fund his family and support them. So I'm assuming that filming has stopped while they investigate. And the other thing I want to do is I want to give a shout out to the maestro himself, John Williams, who just won his 26th Grammy.
For what?
Soundtrack for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. One last hurrah. The man just turned 92. I didn't even think it was that great of a soundtrack, but maybe I need to go back and re-listen to it.
Hey, it's probably, even the Grammys have legacy awards, right?
It's not like they're like, all right, we're just going to reward him for his body of work. He's been rewarded. I think he's been nominated almost 80 times.
Maybe he's just being awarded for being 92. Who knows?
It could be.
What the criteria is.
Yeah, here's one more for you. Don't hurt your back carrying that out. So yeah, there you go. John Williams, 92, still cranking it out.
Awesome.
Good for him. So, all right, that's all I got there.
All right. So Argylle.
As I was watching a YouTube video yesterday, and they kept referring to it as Argylle.
Argylle.
Argylle. That's what I'm like, is this like some AI program just reading this text?
Or an idiot.
Well, I actually had to make a comment on the YouTube channel. I'm like, this is what we're referring to this as? Did you see the movie? Apparently, you've not seen the movie, because if you turn this into a drinking game every time they say the word Argylle, you are going to be demolished within the first half hour.
Absolutely. And let me just point out, there's many, many Clutch the Pearls surprises in this movie, which we are going to talk about.
We are going to ruin the living hell out of this, because I don't think we can really, we could give a 2-minute breakdown and just say, yeah, we liked it, yeah, we didn't, but yeah, we need to break into this, because there are so many twists and turns in this thing that I thought my neck was broken at one point.
Yeah. And the trailer, to its credit, just kind of scratches the surface of what is going on here.
No pun intended with the cat.
You just get a sense that this is like a story about an author whose character comes to life in some way. And then there's a cat in a suitcase.
I will say the trailer highlights the cat significantly throughout this.
Probably every scene that the cat is in the trailer. I would say.
Yes. There's maybe one scene, and that scene didn't make sense. I'm going to say right now, the first 20 minutes, I could not stop comparing this to Sandra Bullock's movie, The Lost City, that just came out last year, which was a very Romancing the Stone ripoff to begin with.
Right, but this gets a little bit deeper into
it does. Well, like I said, the first 20 minutes where she's in the little, she's at it's not even a convention. It's like she's in a bookstore and she's reading. What is it with these movies that depict these authors sitting there and reading the last line of the book to the audience?
Well, it gives the impression that she's read the whole book.
She said the whole book. That's hours. Why am I going to buy your book now? You just read it to me. It doesn't make any sense, but we saw the same thing with Quantumania.
Right.
And I think with that Sandra Bullock movie.
But before we even get there, I just want to compliment Regal. It's been several weeks, maybe more than a month since I've been in the theater.
Yep.
And they have a whole new swath of ads at the beginning, before the movie.
Oh, you want to talk about the trailers? You're talking about the Regal ads.
Just the ads.
Yeah.
So out with the old, in with the new. So I was very surprised by that. Yeah. Like, I haven't seen this before. I haven't seen this before.
Right.
I probably won't be saying that.
You'll get sick of it really quick.
The number one thing I want to point out is that the Regal, Welcome to Regal opening, where you have the simulated roller coaster and its point of view.
It's gone.
It's still there.
Oh, I didn't get it.
Finally, it's loud, like it's in Dolby. And it always, and I've complained about this before, it's always been muted in my previous viewings of it. And I always thought to myself, this should be like one of those old school Dolby things, right? Yeah. And now I think somebody else realized, and it was loud. And the popcorn, that one popcorn popping, bam!
Did it scare you?
I wasn't expecting it. But you said that you had 50 some odd people in your theater for this. I had 4.
Okay.
But it wasn't an evening show. It was, the first showing of the day. But when you have that few people, it is the optimum viewing experience, because generally if there's that many people in there, they're all there to see the movie. Nobody's talking. There were no interruptions. It was a glorious event.
Mm-hmm. That's good. I had one guy in the back who decided to go on a coughing fit just as the movie started. And I'm like, dude, just get up and walk out. I don't know if he was coughing on his popcorn or what was going on. And then I had the old couple who decided to sit right next to me. And he was up probably 3, 4 times. She got up, got another bucket of popcorn. And when the lights came up at the end of the movie, they got up and left. The popcorn all over the floor. This guy must have been like just trying to bathe himself in it. I don't know what was going on, but it was like, holy crap. Do you have a chicken in his pocket?
You know, you can't avoid that because I try to only take one piece at a time so I don't drop it all over the floor.
I had to stop because I always ask for extra butter and layers. And the girl far exceeded my expectations to the point where I couldn't eat it. It was it was doused. And I was like, that's probably what killed me last night at 4 a.m. was that popcorn butter.
Because I never get the butter. I always get it without the butter.
Oh, I can't do it. I can't do it. But I also can't eat it fast enough. And I gotta like line my chest like a 4-year-old with a napkin because I don't want to ruin my shirt. And yeah.
But I'm bringing my contraband M&Ms and dumping it into the popcorn bucket.
See, I wish that they gave out the free samples of the Cheetos popcorn, which I love, but you can only get the little bag. And it's like $8 for a stupid bag. And I'm like, no, I want a bucket. Well, yeah, we can't sell it to you.
Oh, did you see that they're going to have Bob Marley popcorn once that movie comes out? One Love.
I cannot wait for that movie to come out just so I can stop seeing that trailer. Does he really think that his music was going to change the world? Was he that?
Well, that's the issue with all these music bios, you know, because it was just like we talked about this with Bohemian Rhapsody, and I hate music biographies because of this. Like it makes all these
moment, right?
It makes all these moments seem like larger than life when they're probably the most mundane decisions, you know, in the studio or what have you. When I ordered my large popcorn this time, apparently they had leftovers of the special edition Marvel's popcorn bucket because I got a tin Marvel's bucket when I was given my popcorn. Yeah, so I can reuse it over and over again. I can use it at home here.
Well, I did see that you're talking about all the new ads at the up front of the movie, and Regal does now offer refillable popcorn and soda buckets and cups.
I wonder if I can bring this back then.
I wonder. I mean, most people don't realize if you order a large bucket of popcorn, you can get a free refill.
Yeah, but I rarely can eat an entire large.
Oh, I take it home. No,
even with more than one person there.
I take it home. I put it in little Ziploc bags and it goes in my lunchbox. And I eat my popcorn, or more than likely my daughter eats it long before I ever get to it. Or it gets put in a Ziploc bag, gets put in a goodie drawer, and you forget about it. And like 3 weeks later, you're like, oh, this has got to go. And then the birds have a field day. So
and then they all die about 20 minutes later.
They're all like choking on the butter. Like we should have that for the second feature, all those damn birds.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
I did find notes on how many thousands of pounds of bird seed they ate every day.
Speaking of birds, this particular movie introduces the whirly bird, which I don't know if it's a real dance or not.
I don't know, but yeah.
But just like Death on the Nile, it involves one partner being unable to speak during the actual dance step.
That's actually like a third date move. You can't do that on the first date. Yeah.
But yeah, so getting back to Argylle. So as you said, this does open with a fictional sequence, which is the character of Argylle, who is a very James Bondian character who has very like uncomfortable looking clothes that he wears.
Yeah, it's a weird.
It's Henry Cavill, and it's not that the clothes are too tight, but it's buttoned up to his neck.
It's because he's got the big collar coming around the neck, which is kind of a neat look, but he carried it through the whole movie. And yeah, it's I don't know. The hair was, I couldn't stop looking at the hair.
Yeah, it was like complete. What was the name of the movie that Arnold was in where he played the Russian? Red something.
Oh, yes. Red. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about. Not even a brush cut. It's like my grandfather had like the brush cut. This was like, yeah, the brush was gone for 3 extra weeks. And
yeah, my son leaned over and he's like, this is the English Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's
Well, I did read that somebody said this is nothing more than an audition tape for his James Bond, because I guess he's been considered, right, for Bond role.
Yeah. Although I don't somebody like that's like overly built, unless you're playing Superman.
Right.
where it's apt. It's a level of unrealistic,
Yeah.
where you're just like this huge hulking Arnold guy, like who's supposed to be normal.
Well, I mean, Sam Rockwell, I think, even calls her out at one point. He goes when he reveals that he's a spy, and he's like, "Yeah, this is what we look like. We don't look like
Hmm.
your guy."
Yeah.
So yeah, Henry Cavill, Dua Lipa, who I know of. I don't know her music, and I did not realize that was her. But like, she's large on the movie poster, and she gets like one of the top credits, and I'm like, she's in this for like a minute.
Yeah, but I think that's a failing of ours, not really realizing how big she is now. Because that would be like Madonna being in Dick Tracy in 1990. It's a
But I
major
don't think,
selling point of this
yeah,
movie.
maybe. Am I just that old? I don't know. I'm not hip with the kids anymore.
It's probably almost the equivalent of Taylor Swift being in this movie for 5 minutes, and then she would be on the poster, just like.
But again, right. So if I'm a 13-year-old girl and there were two girls in front of me who were there by themselves, were they there just to see Dua Lipa? I don't think they were there to see Sam Rockwell. And they'd be very disappointed because this character comes and goes.
Right. Well, hopefully they enjoyed the movie anyway.
I will tell you, she's a looker. That's all I'm gonna say. I don't
But
know about an actor, but she's a looker.
but she is a fictional character in like, well, they're literally all fictional characters, of course,
Yeah.
but
Now, in the context of this movie,
in the
she
context of this movie, yes, she
Right.
is a fictional character. So it's a fictional scene that's created by the author, and the author's name, and it's very
Ellie.
important to distinguish this. The author's name is Ellie Conway.
Ellie Conway,
So
played
she
by
has
Bryce
written
Dallas Howard.
Bryce Dallas Howard, she's taken a sabbatical from her Jurassic World films and, has had time enough to be in this one because, yes, there's another Jurassic World film on the way.
I know. I
Yeah.
saw that. All right. So jumping off that, there is a scene where her character pulls her high heels off and puts on boots. And I don't know if that was a direct comment on a lot of the people were crying about that in the first Jurassic World, that she was running around the jungles in heels.
But she has written a book series, all based around this spy, this very Bondian spy, Agent Argylle.
Yeah.
It opens with this sequence, a chase sequence, and it's established that Argylle has this like a Felix Leiter, as in the James Bond films,
Yeah.
partner played by John Cena.
Yes.
And his name is Wyatt. And they both have, like, as the Spider-Man movies call this character, the guy in the chair, but it's actually a girl in a chair in this case, who is
what was her
Kira.
name?
The
Kira, yeah.
character's name is
Yep.
Kira, played by Ariana DeBose, who was nominated for all the awards for her turn in Spielberg's West Side Story. So in the scene, at the end of the sequence, Dua Lipa is the bad guy who's being chased by Argylle. They catch her and they find out that she's on the same side. And it's actually like a Hydra/Shield situation where their bosses are the bad guys and they're setting them against each other. They're agents for whatever
Right.
reason. So then after that revelation, it's pulled back and you see that, in fact, that this hyper stylized sequence is actually a fiction, and it's from Ellie Conway's latest Argylle book. And as
Yeah.
you say, she's reading the chapter to
The
an
cat.
assemblage of fans, right? Because first she's in
Yeah,
this book
she's
signing
right, correct.
situation. Yeah,
Yeah. Book 4.
right. And she's
Yeah.
answering questions from fans. And one of them asks her, "Are you a real spy?" Apparently her books are so good or realistic. Like, do you really do this? And she slyly, steps aside from that question. And somebody has the gall to ask her out, one of the fans.
Hey, you're never going to know the answer unless you throw it out there.
I would think in reality, if that happened, they would be removed from the premises immediately.
Yeah, I don't want to be hanging out with somebody who's a fan of my stuff.
Maybe a situation where we should have Christina's in on this answer, but I would like to know what she would do if that happened to her.
If somebody
They,
hit on her. Yeah, back in the day when I used to do conventions, I did have a couple, I don't know if you call them groupies, but it's uncomfortable when they just hang out at your table and gush about your work all day. Yeah, I don't want to go out to dinner with that person. So, and this, like you said, this opening sequence. So Matthew Vaughn, who directed this, is very stylized with his work. The Kingsman, which I love. A lot of the slow motion, slow-mo action sequences, kick ass. and Layer Cake, which is his first movie. So he's got a very particular style. This comes across in this opening sequence, but it's so over the top. You know, you got Dua Lipa's character racing away in a motorcycle down a long, windy road, and Argylle has to steal this little Jeep, and he's literally jumping from rooftop to rooftop, cutting straight through. And it's silly. This thing would have made it more than 10 feet. So you know that what you're watching is a hyper-realized world to begin with.
Yeah,
and then
it's kind of like an extra ridiculous take on the opening of No Time to Die, the last James Bond movie.
Yeah. But if you've seen the trailer, and they've banged these trailers over our head numerous times for the last couple months, it's no secret that, you know, she's a writer and these are her characters.
And she's on the verge of finishing the latest book in the series. And that's how she writes off this guy that hits on her. Like, oh, are you doing anything tonight? Yeah, as a matter of fact, I do have plans. And then you see those plans is being at home with her cat, trying to finish the latest book. And she ends it on a cliffhanger. And she gets a call from her mother, played by Catherine O'Hara.
Yes, nice. Always nice to see Catherine
unmistakable
O'Hara.
Catherine O'Hara. And her mother kind of calls her out on the ending, like, this is a cliffhanger. Your readers deserve more. Find out a little bit later she's got some ulterior motives on getting Ellie to finish this book properly. But
this is like writing a book and then getting yelled at because we don't know if grandma's behind the door or not. Shout out to our co-host.
It gives the impression that mom is a very domineering figure in her life. Because as soon as mom says, nope, the ending is not up to snuff, Ellie immediately backs down and says, okay, come on over, help me write something good.
Well, I got the impression at first that maybe mom was like her publisher, or mom was, you know, her co-writer, or at least, you know, looking over her shoulder, helping her craft this stuff.
Well, mom is, as it turns out, extremely invested in what Ellie writes. So it's no surprise, you know, looking back on this, that she's so heavily involved. But mom offers to come to her house to help her work it out. But Ellie decides she actually packs up the cat in a briefcase, as we've all seen in the trailers.
Why?
It's a little backpack with a window in it so the cat can see out.
It's funny that you mentioned Taylor Swift, because I guess this whole character is kind of designed and based around Taylor Swift, who does have one of these Scottish fold cats and carries it around in a backpack and wears a lot of cardigan sweaters.
What if the cat has to go to the bathroom?
Oh, that's what I'm thinking. And even Sam Rockwell, that thing got enough air in there?
Yeah.
And the cat's just chill. The cat's just like, yeah, this is cool. But
I mean, and Ellie's like, of course it does. And the cat's like,
yeah, correct. But you're right. The cat is a complete red herring, because all the funny stuff that happens with this cat, and that is the cat gets the biggest laugh in my theater throughout this movie. Even though it shows up in the trailer, people still chuckled.
And about, I think, 90% of the shots of this cat are CG, and they're obviously CG.
Yeah. You think?
Mm-hmm. Every once in a while, when the cat doesn't have to do anything, like other than eat, it's a real cat. Or like be held still, it's a real cat.
I'd like to think that they really threw it over the side of the building.
Yeah, they do have 9 lives, right?
Yeah, well, he used up at least one of them, if not 2. Elfie is the cat.
So Ellie decides to pack up the cat, get on a train, and go to her mother rather than wait for her mother to come to her, because she just wants to finish this book. So she's on this passenger train that's like going through the mountains somewhere. I don't know. Was it ever established where she lives? I don't know. Somewhere in the Rockies?
The parents lived in Chicago. No, I don't think it was ever established. No, I mean, there probably were clues. I didn't pay enough attention to that.
Well, she's on the train.
And it's rugged wilderness there, so I would assume out west somewhere.
And some generic cute guy in in very expensive clothes comes by and says, hey, is this seat taken? And she, of course, because she is not looking for anyone, and it's made quite clear from the beginning of the movie, she says, yes, it's taken. And he, disgruntled, moves on. And then suddenly, this very bedraggled character
That's 2 people that
in.
have hit on her.
Yeah.
And that she's turned them off.
Mm-hmm.
These are introverted writers right here.
And suddenly Sam Rockwell's character comes in. He's got long, looks like dirty hair and beard, and he's got a Gilligan hat on, sits right down, doesn't even ask her, and takes out her book because he's reading it, and he doesn't realize that it's her.
He does realize
He
it's her.
does, he
He
does,
knows.
but-
It's just, the whole thing's being played.
But as a viewer, this is unfolding, so it's made to look like he doesn't know it's her. And then he looks at the photo because he ends the book as he's sitting there, looks at the photo, looks up at her, and now she's got to engage. Now she's got to engage with
Now, see, if he was at that book reading, he would have known how it ended.
Yeah.
Because she
He
read
would
him the
have.
whole
She
book.
read-
She
she read the
read the
whole
whole
damn
book.
Yeah.
And he even asked her, "Did you read this one yet?"
Mhm.
Yeah, about 10 minutes ago, you missed it.
But he's not talking to her for 2 minutes before he reveals who he really is. He is a spy, and he is there to protect her. And he's like, everybody around you in this car is looking to get you, and I am going to protect you. Here's what I'm going to do. And it all comes true. He starts to fight everybody else in that car. It's a great action sequence, actually.
It is.
It's like a train to Busan, it suddenly turns into.
It's no bullet train, but it is a fun self-contained. And what's happening is this where it starts, where she starts flashing and having epileptic seizures, where all of a sudden his Sam Rockwell starts to change to Henry Cavill.
Yes.
And she's seeing her character play out this action sequences. So what's impressive about this editorially is that they had to film both of these fight sequences with both of these actors so that they could seamlessly kind of cut those scenes where all of a sudden she blinks. There's a lot of blinking going on in this movie, by the way. And all of a sudden, Sam Rockwell's character is, in fact, Argylle, Henry Cavill.
It's a trick that they play on the audience because it's almost you're brainwashed in your subconscious to thinking that Henry Cavill isn't actually in this movie because he's not an active character in the movie. He's a fictional character in the movie. So it's very easy to forget, even though he's on screen. I don't know. It's weird. I know it sounds really stupid now that I'm actually saying this out loud. But because he's not an active character in the plot line of this movie, he's, in my head anyway, he was kind of discounted as being an actor in the film, which is unfair, but maybe
it is unfair. He did a lot of work.
He did.
But he is acting as her subconscious.
Yes,
is my takeaway from this. And and she's like what's going on here? Why am I seeing this? What's going on?
You jump to the conclusion as an audience member is that it's a coping mechanism because this is unreal what's happening to her, that she's suddenly in the middle of this real spy story and she's seeing him to kind of cope with the stress that's going on. And she
either that or
says that herself.
Either that or she's schizophrenic. I don't know.
But there's a parachute escape off of the train because it's going over like a gorge.
Again, they show it on the trailer.
And it turns out that there's people after her because her books very strangely mirror reality. She's made up an organization called the Directorate. There is actually a real life organization called the Division. And the plot of her books is somehow being taken from real life, that the Division is double crossing its agents. And one of their agents, and it's Argylle in the book, but she thinks it's Aiden in real life, is trying to expose the Directorate for what they really are. And there's a flash drive hidden inside a silver bullet, and they're trying to track down a hacker. So Sam Rockwell involves her because he thinks that or at this point, he's telling her and telling the audience that he thinks she's some kind of psychic that is keyed into real life events, and he wants her to write the next chapter. So he knows where to find this silver bullet.
Right. So just like Mom, who tells her she needs to write an extra chapter, now that you got this guy going, you need to write another chapter. So so he shows her that this agency has been monitoring her. They've already read book 5 because they have access to her computer. Yeah, this is where this movie loses me. These twists and turns are so ridiculous and they make no sense.
No, but I think that that's part of the fun. This movie is obviously tongue in cheek. Like the Kingsman movies, they're just fun. They're not.
They are.
They're not played straight. James Bond movies, yeah, they're fun, but they're largely played straight, which is what's so endearing about them. This is not whatsoever. They're joking through the whole thing. Sam Rockwell breaks out in dance various points during the action sequences. So, and you've got the CG cat flying up in the air, being dropped off rooftops. So it plays more of like a romantic comedy, like you're romancing The Stone or The Lost City, than a straightforward spy action thriller. So I'll give it that. I'll give it its
I will
its
give it that as
ridiculous
well.
twists and turns.
This did not work for me at all.
Oh
This
no.
did not work. I was so well, when I came out of the theater, my wife loves to, and the first thing she asked, "How was it?" And I just wrote, "It made me mad." And she's just sends back question marks. I'm like, all right, we're not going to get into it via text.
Well, this made me glad. So
That's
I
fine.
really liked it.
I never laughed once. I read a review on IMDb and someone said, keep an eye out for the blink and you'll miss it hilarity. I must have blinked. This did not make me chuckle. And it's absurd. Exactly what you're saying. The Kingsman is a lot of fun.
Even
It is over the top.
even the twist and crack the skull moment didn't make you chuckle.
No, I
Oh,
did not like. I'm a curmudgeon.
Yes,
I think so, and that makes me mad because I was really looking forward to this. You even said, you go, oh, your guy Matthew Vaughn directed this.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I'm all on board for Matthew Vaughn. I love the stuff. This did not work for me at all. I didn't like any of the musical cues. I didn't like it. The later in the movie, and we'll get to it, where she's ice skating.
Yeah. Again, it's not a serious. It's like watching
I know.
Jason Statham movie.
I couldn't get on board with it. I don't know. I like Bryce Dallas Howard. When they make her, they put her in a dress and they give her blonde hair. I love Sam Rockwell.
I thought she was fantastic. I thought it was really against type what she was playing.
It is against type, and a lot of people claim that she was completely miscast. I won't go that far because I do like her, and I thought that as Ellie. But as the movie goes on, the twists are just twists for the sake of being twists. They don't make sense.
Well, the twists make the movie.
Okay.
That's the reason they make the movie, is for these twists. If she's just Ellie throughout the whole thing,
no, I agree with you.
There's no point to the movie.
No, I agree with you. But when the twist, you find out that she's been brainwashed and that for 5 years, they've told her that she's this Ellie character, and Bryan Cranston and Catherine O'Hara have been pretending to be her parents. And then she's written these books because these are memories that are flooding out of her. And that's why they need her to finish this book, because they want to find out where this flash drive is. 5 years. They've just been sitting around for 5 years for this girl to write the next chapter.
It's the long con.
That's a long con. You couldn't have just gone to that apartment to begin with to find out where this guy was, where this girl was, or who was all her contacts. But this one didn't have the silver bullet. Let's go to this one.
Well, then you wouldn't have a movie, right? But the one issue that I have with the movie, right, is that they use the Beatles song Now and Then.
Okay, I was going to ask you about this because this is a brand new Beatles song that was just finished by Paul McCartney and Ringo.
Yes, and it is played probably about 6 or 7 times, and the musical cues, the main theme bases itself on this song.
Okay.
And as it's revealed, and this is one of the Clutch Your Pearls moments, that the character of Ellie Conway, as you said, is actually Argylle herself. She is Agent Argylle in reality.
Yeah.
And Sam Rockwell's character was romantically involved with her when she was Argylle.
And he is the Wyatt character. So theoretically, technically, he should have turned into John Cena whenever she saw him in action.
Right.
But not Argylle.
That doesn't happen. So it's revealed that this Now and Then is their song. So that took me out of the movie because I'm like, this song just came out 2 months ago.
And this was 5-year con where she's been just kind of living another life, and everyone else knows that she's alive. She has no friends. When she escapes from Sam Rockwell, when she overhears him in the hotel room after he saves her from the train, that Ellie Conway needs to get a bullet in her head. So they've stolen this book. They have this book that has all these codes in it. So she runs away thinking that he's actually a bad guy, calls the mom, who's in Chicago, and she's now in London.
The mom says that she's going to meet her in London. So I'm sure that they have some kind of supersonic jet in their evil organization where they could have gotten there.
Okay, but in her world, mom and dad still live in Chicago. And we did see later, yes, they fabricated a fake kitchen on the set of this secret organization, oil tanker or whatever. So she was clueless that she was really talking to them off the coast. But you can't just like show up an hour later. It's like, Mom, you were just in Chicago. So would she just like hide out somewhere for
Yeah,
a day and a
she just
half. It was
stayed. She
over.
just stayed in a restaurant somewhere, and then
It just like I am all for. I am so mad that I really wanted to like this, and I am so willing to just suspend, turn my brain off, and this did not work for me at all.
you see,
I was sitting there every time she like. There's a lot of point of views where she gets knocked unconscious or she falls asleep. And it's from her eyeballs, and you actually see the eyelashes or whatever. As she closes her eyes, the screen goes to dark. And I'm like, I could probably take a nap right now.
no, no, no. I really liked it.
I'm glad
I
you
get you.
liked it.
I get you when you say the movie made you mad because there's been plenty of times where movies have made me very upset.
Invisible Man.
Movies not unlike this one.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, I was on board. I really
Yeah.
like all the actors that were in it. I think they all did a great job. They even the bad guys, right? So,
Yeah.
and I really enjoyed the oil ice skating scene.
Oh, it didn't make any sense. You can't ice skate with two knives attached to your boots, and they're all covered in oil. The whole sequence was so CG that it just was like once she's blonde, like all of a sudden now she looks like Amy Schumer, and I couldn't get that out of my head. It's
There's a lot
preposterous.
of things in a lot of movies that are impossible to do, and this
Yes.
oil skating scene is one of them. That's why you go to the movies is to see things like this.
I know you tried to sell me on this. And maybe in 6 months when this drops and I watch it again in the comfort of my own home, I don't know. I don't think I knew going in, we've talked about this. I really wanted to see it. I thought it would be a fantastic date movie with my wife. My wife, this is right in her wheelhouse. With this, Romancing the Stone is a favorite of hers. The Lost City. I love that movie. The chemistry between those two characters was great. And it was a lot of fun, even though it was very derivative of Romancing the Stone. And this is derivative of that movie to a certain degree. And then they just keep pulling these twists and turns, and it just
But
they lost me.
I was right there with each one of them, and I would be interested because it's too bad that you told your wife, I mean, that you didn't like it because I'd be interested to know
That
what she did think about it when she eventually sees it. Hopefully,
I would like, yeah, and my opinion does not hinge. She doesn't go, oh, well, Jeff didn't like it, I'm not going to like it. That's not the way it works at all because there's plenty of movies that we've watched together and she's just absolutely adored them. And I'm like, okay, all right. I'm not going to sit here and explain to you why it's a bad movie. You enjoyed it, so I'm happy.
So one sequence I do have to point out that I really did enjoy, that stands out is the whole final fight between Ellie slash Argylle
Yep.
and
Sam Jackson.
Aiden, because
No, Sam Rockwell.
Sam Rockwell, because Sam Jackson is in this too. Basically,
Yeah.
watching a basketball game. That's all he has to do in this
Yeah,
movie. Is watch a
again,
basketball
there's
game.
this name large up on the movie poster, and he probably filmed his scenes in a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we also have Sophia Botella. I'm like, where do I know her from? I'm like, of course, Rebel Moon. We just talked about Rebel
Yeah,
Moon.
yeah. Yeah,
But
you know what? Vaughn does tend to have a little bit of a cavalcade of actors that he falls back on.
But I was just about to talk about that fight where Catherine O'Hara is playing the wind up of the Beatles song Now and Then on the little
Yeah. So if that triggers her into being brainwashed, then why when they were dancing did it not trigger her?
well, because she also had to read the code and then start playing the song for it to work. So you see, they've gotten out there.
Okay.
The other thing that struck me, again, it was all around them using this song. This is the only thing I had a problem with in the movie because it was very obvious that they never actually mentioned the name of the song.
No.
It's very obvious that they filmed this movie without knowing what song that they were going to use and then just put it in post.
And I was clueless.
It could be
I had
any
no
song.
clue that this was a Beatles song, a brand new Beatles song.
Yeah. It could have been any song because it's never literally mentioned at all. Oh, this is our song. It could be anything.
Yeah, yeah. We'll fix it in post. Don't worry about it.
All in all, that's a very small problem, I think, if that was the only thing I had issue with, because I liked the song. I liked hearing it. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought I liked it for what it was, and I'll probably watch it again once it shows up on Apple.
I probably will too. I probably will give it another shot because I don't like. I've been called out for throwing a lot of shade at Dial of Destiny as well in our review of that. So sometimes you got to give these things. These are just my initial thoughts. My initial, literally walking out of the theater probably 24 hours ago.
There is a post-credits sequence. There's not an end
Which,
credit sequence, so you don't have to hang around all the way to the end.
no, and this doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, if you're a fan of the Kingsman movies, which you
Which
are,
I am.
there's a tie-in, so it gives the impression that this is in the same universe as the Kingsman movies are.
Which is what Vaughn is going for. He's like, why should Marvel have all the fun with a shared universe?
Right.
Let's do a super spy tie-in, which is fine. I love the Kingsman. The Golden Circle, I was not as on board with, but the Kingsman, which is a prequel, I enjoyed. And he's got numerous other movies in that franchise that he's looking to pull together. And yeah, this goes back. So at the end, she's back in the same room reading to another audience
an entire
entire new book. So in 5 years,
did she even have a bottle of water there next to her when at the table?
Don't know.
I hope so.
But a guy stands up to ask a question, and it's Henry Cavill.
But they try to make him look like a hillbilly. And he's
with long, scraggly hair, and he goes, "Do you have any questions for me?"
He actually says, "You got any questions for me?" Like,
okay. And she's like
Gomer Pyle,
and she's like he's real, which makes no effing sense. And then the mid-credit, you get a cut back 20 years earlier, and there it is, the Kingsman Tavern in the middle of nowhere, probably in Ireland somewhere or England. You actually see the Kingsman logo up on the little post, so this is in fact, and in walks this kid, and he asks for, I don't know, a cranberry and a twist. And sure enough, the guy, he's got some secret code. The bartender hands him over a box, and there's a gun in it. You must be in a lot of trouble if you came to me, if they sent you to me.
But the kid is like a teenager, and he's like skinny, and he looks nothing like the Henry Cavill.
And this is supposed to be Henry Cavill's Aubrey Argylle. So this makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, I could have done without this
character. After all,
could have done without it.
It didn't make any sense, and that was like the knife twisting at the end. It was just like, and so if they have a shared universe, don't forget Sam Jackson was the main bad guy in the first Kingsman movie. He was the guy with the lisp. And he was fantastic. You can't tell me that's the same character. There's no way in the world. I think he died at the end of the first one.
Well, we'll see where they go.
This guy was like an ex-CIA or Sam Jackson's character in this.
Sam Jackson's character was the same name as the cat, Alfie.
Oh, that's right. Alfie. You're right.
So it's set up that Vaughn wants to do a prequel, like how Argylle
there was supposed to be a trilogy that would tie into the Kingsman. And then there's going to be yet another series that he wants to create that would somehow tie into this. So there would be 3 separate movie universes that would eventually come together and be like an Avengers, but not Marvel Avengers, but more like Avengers, the old Emma Peel, John Steed super spy.
Whether that will come to pass is a huge question mark, because depending on what you read, the budget of this thing is so overinflated. It doesn't seem to be realistic, because what I'm reading now online is that the budget was between 200 and 250 million.
Yeah, I heard 2. Which is still pretty preposterous.
But Vaughn is saying that I don't know how you spend 200 million on something like this.
Yeah, answer me this.
Unless I'm making a 5-hour CG fest. So I agree with them. Watching the movie, you're like, this doesn't look like, because that's like high Marvel territory budget-wise.
There's probably 3 sequences in that I thought maybe could require, the opening sequence where Henry Cavill's chasing Dua Lipa down the mountainside with the truck, and he's bouncing off buildings or whatever. That probably required a lot of CG work.
I think what's happening here is that media outlets are misreporting the budget, because in August of 2021, Apple TV bought the rights for this movie for 200 million. So I think that's being confused now.
Yes, with the budget. Yeah.
So what the real budget is, who knows? But it's made so far at the box office 43 million. So
In its second week.
in its second week. So I'm pretty sure that the budget was more than 43 million.
Yeah.
So even if it wasn't 200 million,
Yeah.
so whether or not it does get a prequel or a sequel or a
Well, I mean,
series,
I don't think it's, we just said this. I mean, I had 50 people in my theater. People don't give a crap what you and I are saying about this, or what professional reviewers or what the naysayers are saying on YouTube. People are still going to see it. And it is, if you want to just unplug your brain and sit there it's long. It's very long. It is 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah, it is.
It's a little too long, especially when you're sitting through 40 minutes of trailers, which I enjoyed more so on the back end.
See, I didn't see one trailer that I was interested in.
Furiosa? You didn't see Furiosa?
Didn't see it.
What about the Fall Guy?
Didn't see it.
Holy crap. So Ryan Gosling, not to hijack this whole Argylle conversation, but Ryan Gosling, in Emily Blunt, it looks like a really fun movie. Then it cuts to the title, The Fall Guy. And I'm like,
what is Emily Blunt playing the Heather Thomas character?
She's playing the director of a movie. He's a stunt guy.
So the only reason to watch The Fall Guy in the 80s was Heather
Locklear. Yeah. Oh, Heather Thomas.
Heather
Locklear
Thomas
was on T.J. Hooker.
She was on, and then Dynasty after that. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to throw this out here right now. Apparently, I was the only one who was really hoping that the real Argylle turned out to be John McClane's limo driver. That's the only other Argylle I know ever, right? Wasn't that his name? Argylle.
I don't remember.
I'm telling you right now that was his name. I'm going to die on that hill.
But Vaughn does say, in the same interview where he was talking about the budget, this is his ode to 80s thrillers like Die Hard and Lethal Weapon. So it could be. Could be.
Well, there is one other sequence where they're in the munitions and they have to break their way out, and they're using the colored smoke, and they have this whole choreographed dance.
A very, very stylized sequence.
It's so silly, and again, it's fun to watch visually. This is a very impressive movie.
Yeah,
again,
it is silly.
Matthew Vaughn is on his game with a lot of this, the camera tracking and whatnot. I was rolling my eyes.
But no, I thought that sequence in particular feeds directly into what they were trying to do. So I accepted it. But
Bryan Cranston, they're sitting there watching this all unfold, and he waits until they kill everybody. And he's like, can we open up the vents and get rid of that smoke so we can see these people? Why didn't you do that 10 minutes ago?
Because then we wouldn't have the sequence if he did.
In the cat. All right. So we talk about, I'm just going to bring this up. So Bryan Cranston has them dead to rights. They're trying to upload the file to Sam Jackson's character. He's got them at gunpoint with his shotgun, who we've seen, he blew that guy's face off willy-nilly. So he's got the shotgun, and the backpack with the cat and the broken glass is on her back. And all of a sudden, the cat comes over her shoulder, attacks his face, and claws him, which got a huge laugh from my audience. But I'm like, that cat thought that was her dad for 5 years. Why would he attack him?
Because he was threatening.
The cat knows what a gun is. The cat's shown me no other smarts.
He knows what a raised tone of voice is.
This is not Spot from Inspector Gadget.
No. All right. How many buckets would we give to
2.5?
2.5.
I'm going 2.5. I'm going right in the middle of the road.
I'm going 3 3/4.
Okay. I was so, like I said, it made me mad that I didn't like it more.
I liked it. I thought it was a fun ride.
All right. And we don't have a third this week, so we can't have a tiebreaker. Nope.
No, when these things happen, I'm on the losing end, so she would have probably not liked it, I'm sure.
I don't know. I think it's right in her wheelhouse. He probably it is. Yeah, the whole premise is preposterous and ridiculous.
It is.
But again,
that's why I liked
turn your brain off. I know. Listen, I like plenty of ridiculous movies. So this one I didn't care for. All right.
Yeah. Let's get this out of our system and go to the concession stand, cleanse our palate.
All right. What'd you bring
before the next film? I again tried to tie this in somehow.
How did you pull that off?
with at
All
least
right.
one of these movies.
Okay.
So I cheated a little bit. This is not something that you're going to find at your typical concession stand unless you're in a
Wait,
high end.
Can I guess?
Sure.
Did you go Peeps? The
No.
birds? Ah, that would
That would have been good. That would have been good. Now that you say that, but I went with the black and white cookie.
Oh, look at you. A little duality going on there.
Yeah, of course. All right. So I was actually
Also known as the doppelganger donut.
the doppelganger donut. I've never heard that.
No, I made it up just now.
That is pretty good, Jeff. That's
like
got
that.
alliteration as well.
There you go.
I do have to credit the website Eater New York and an article written by Robert Sietsma in 2014 for most of this information. I never knew this, being a New Yorker myself, but the black and white cookie is really a Northeast phenomenon, apparently. That's where it was birthed, and this is where it pretty much stays. I haven't really gone to bakeries when I've been on vacation, so I
Do
don't
you have
really
any black
know.
and white cookies?
Yeah.
That's a northern New York thing.
And anybody in the Northeast, hopefully if you're elsewhere, this has reached its way to you at some point. I find it very hard to believe.
Well, Seinfeld had a whole episode devoted to it.
Yeah, well, there's some scuttlebutt from black and white cookie fans that Seinfeld have taken the cookie and made a
joke out of it?
A joke out of it, yeah.
A mockery.
A mockery of the meaning. But if you don't know, it's not really a cookie. It's more like a cake. It's probably, would you say, 5 inches in diameter normally, as perfect circle?
They're pretty big size. They're pretty good.
6 inches in diameter. Cut right down the middle with vanilla fondant, white, and chocolate fondant, black. And because of the thickness of the fondant, you can actually break this in half perfectly. And it makes...
Do they put a crease?
They don't make a crease, but I think because of the fondant being so, there's a line between them.
Yeah, and it's pretty
if you
heavy
break
too.
It always breaks perfectly. I have to say that about the black and white, that it breaks perfectly. But, I don't know how you eat yours, but I do like to break mine in half. I don't like to mix the vanilla and the chocolate. And if you were watching that Seinfeld episode, you're supposed to do that because of the racial connotation, bringing them together.
Is this like the whole Twix controversy, the right or left?
I don't know the Twix controversy.
They have a whole campaign around it.
Oh, really?
They actually sell them now, left side and right side, individually.
Oh, all right. No.
Stupid.
Per William Grimes, in a New York Times 1998 article, the texture of the cookie is a drop cake, where it's, like I said before, really like a mini cake rather than a cookie, because it is a very soft, cake-like kind of texture to it. Its lineage can be traced to the Half Moon cookie, which is out there in the United States. That was more unabashedly like a cake. It was like a dome shape on the bottom. Some black and white cookies are dome on the bottom, like the thicker ones, but for the most part, they're kind of flat. The Half Moon was a dome, and those could be frosting rather than fondant, and very thick frosting, to say the least. So those are like a messy proposition, the Half Moon cake. So if given the choice, I think I'd rather have the more compact black and white cookie. And I am a black and white cookie fan. I will say that. I've had more than my share of black and white cookies. There is a bakery in Utica that tries to say that they are the originator of the black and white cookie.
Truly in upstate New York, huh?
Yeah. Hemstraat's Bakery. They trace it to 1925, being their black and white, being based on the Half Moon. But historical records put this back into colonial times.
They made fondant that far back.
So not quite the black and white, right? So the fondant didn't exist then, but the Half Moon definitely. The word cookie, as a matter of fact, is a Dutch word that dates back to those colonial times for little cake. So again, cookie, cake, I don't know when cookie became something else.
So Cookie Monster is Little Cake Monster?
I guess so. Yeah, I guess so.
Nom 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 nom.
So here we go. So rather than the sign, because that was the whole Seinfeld thing was just written for the episode about the two races coming together in one cookie. What the black and white or the half moon cookie more aptly actually does represent is the halfway point of the lunar cycle. Hence the half moon cookie. Yeah. Others besides Hemstraat's Bakery in 1925 tie the half moon / black and white to Glazier's Bake Shop in New York City to 1902. But again, these are also tied to colonial times. So these have been in existence for quite some time. Huh. So again, this is something that I would like to ask Christina if black and whites or half moon cookies have made their way to Chicago bakeries. I'm sure they have. It can't be
Have to be, right.
It can't be only in New York.
No. Maybe listen, I can walk into a grocery store right now and buy a Chicago deep dish pizza.
Yeah.
Half moon cookies have to be out there.
Right.
But is it a waning half moon or a waxing half moon?
I have no idea.
Ooh.
I don't know my moons like that.
There's your conundrum for the day.
Anytime I'm in a new bakery, I do have to sample their black and white cookie because for whatever reason, they're always different. It might be the fondant that they used. It might be the thickness of the cake. So, there's more vanilla in the cake than others. Everybody's black and white cookie is different. So I've never had I have to say, I've never had a bad one. I've never had a bad black and white cookie experience.
You call this a black and white cookie? Yeah. How dare you? Which side do you eat first?
The vanilla. I do like I like the chocolate. So I'm one of those people that saves the best for last.
Okay, I'm going to be very controversial right now. What if you broke it in half and then folded it over and then ate it like a sandwich?
Well, you can't because it would break it again. You can't fold the black and white cookie.
Well, you break it in half. You break it in half. Just roll it over.
Oh, and then just
place it on top of the other.
That'd be too much. It'd be too thick.
I'm just throwing out the questions.
Yeah.
I'm not a big sweet guy, so I can't tell you the last time I had a black and white cookie. But that's a nice little tie-in with these movies. Though.
Yeah. Although now that you say Peeps, that would have been perfect.
Well, it would really other than the whirly bird in the first movie, it wouldn't have really worked. But so there you go. Black and white cookie.
All right, let's go back to the theater.
All right, let's go back to the theater. Oh, it's dark in here.
Yeah.
But only half of it's dark.
Only half. All right, so this is from 1993, filmed in 1990 and then a little bit into 1991, but because of the financial difficulties of distributor Orion, it was not released for 2 years.
That logo gets me every time.
It does, doesn't it?
Such a throwback. And it's my favorite constellation. I still love Orion.
I love the twirling of the O.
Yeah.
It always makes me think of RoboCop.
Yes.
Always.
Yeah. No, that's funny that there are certain studio logos that immediately elicit, Fox 20th century, fanfare. Immediately Star Wars.
Oh, well, for me, it's Alien, but
okay,
like the old school Universal Jaws.
Yeah. But yeah, that Orion logo immediately, you're set in a specific time. I mean, it's made a bit of a comeback now. I think it's a small boutique studio. Someone else, I don't know who bought it out, but yeah, you see that logo and you're like, all right, that might be in good for a good time.
Yeah,
a treat. So it was filmed and then sat around for almost 2 years.
Exactly. Yeah. So, which explains because the prologue of this is in 1968,
right?
And what did it say?
23 years later.
23 years later, and I'm counting on my fingers. That would make it 1991.
I did not crunch the numbers on that, but that's fine. You're close enough. It's not like this was released.
So the movie was supposed to be released in 1991, but it didn't make it there. George Romero directed this.
George A. Romero
directed this, and this is one of his few forays into big budget filmmaking, as this is bankrolled by Orion, as we mentioned.
And we immediately see this kid, and he's got a Castle Rock High School, junior high.
Yeah,
Talk about your shared universes, right? This is like one of Stephen King's. Wasn't there a TV series called Castle Rock?
Yes, there was.
Oh, there was. Okay.
I think all these towns exist in the same universe. Your Salem's Lot, your Derry, Maine. But
specifically Castle Rock, Maine, I think that's where at least Stand By Me and Cujo took place.
Yeah, that's like ground zero. That's
That's a
ground
lot of
zero.
crap going on in one little town.
Mm-hmm.
I might want to move. That's like Angela Lansbury in Murder, She Wrote. It's like every week someone's dying in your town. I would move. I would
With,
not
you
be.
know, what by either like a monster or some kind of supernatural means, you know. But I do have to say that I have to give a shout out to the actual book, The Dark Half,
Okay.
because this was published in 1988, which is when I was hired, and I worked at a bookstore for several years, and that's how I know Christina. Um, and that was my first Stephen King release, working
Oh,
at a bookstore.
and this is a full-on book. This is not a novella. This is not a short story. This was an actual novel.
Right, it was an actual
Okay.
novel. Oh, I'm sorry, I said 88. It was 89.
Oh,
But
okay.
that was like the first huge display that I had to build for a Stephen King book, which, was par for the course with every other book that he came out with. But The Dark Half was my first. So I remember getting that hardcover and reading it, so I
This
was
was
very
your
familiar.
this was your gateway drug, huh?
It wasn't. It was my gateway in terms of a bookstore employee,
Okay.
but
Oh,
I had
gotcha.
read Stephen
Oh,
King
okay. I thought you
plenty.
meant it was your first
No,
Stephen
no, it wasn't
King.
my
Okay.
first. I had
King.
that wasn't my first rodeo with King himself, but
Okay.
just
All right. Yeehaw.
as dealing with the cardboard stand-ups and everything else that came along with them.
Did you promote like at the bookstore? Did they really tie in like now a major motion picture?
Yeah, because you'd get again a cardboard stand-up for the paperback, the mass
Yeah.
markets as they
Yeah.
called them. And so there'd be a display with the Dark Half
Mhm.
poster artwork rather than the original hardcover book.
Hardcover, yeah.
But you see this kid, as a kid in 1968, Thad Beaumont is the character's
Thaddeus.
name. He's an aspiring writer, and what's interesting is that the story that he's writing, Let There Be Tigers, I believe, is the title
Oh
of it.
yes, I did read that. King's very first story, right?
In reality, no, I'm sorry, it's more like a piratey kind of a title. Here There Be Tigers.
Yarg.
That was actually Stephen King's first short story, and
Okay.
it's also in this movie Thad Beaumont's first short story.
All right.
And
This
he
is
writes,
very autobiographical, is
yeah.
my take on this
Well,
because
there's a lot of King stories, write what you know is the old dictum. So there's a lot of
yeah,
stories where the main character is a writer.
yeah, misery,
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah. But this seems like I questioned like, did he write this after his car accident?
I don't know. I don't know King's personal
Okay,
life well enough to know
okay,
that, but
oh, okay,
I don't know. But Thad is stricken with headaches out of the blue, right? So this is all in like this little 5-minute prologue.
yeah, immediately.
Yep.
We do get that up front, that barrage of birds flying in the horizon, setting up this idea.
A beautiful opening shot, because this is like back in the day, right? The CG in here is very rudimentary.
It is, and they used a lot of tricks to emulate these birds, and we'll get into it on the back end.
But the opening shot, you could tell that they had to sit there and actually film these birds.
Yeah.
I think I read that they used 4,500 birds total in this movie for shots like this opening shot where there's a huge flock of birds in these barren trees.
4,500, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Probably some guy below him like let off some kind of air horn so they all would fly away at the same time.
That's animal cruelty.
But you see early on that Thad is writing longhand with these Black Beauty pencils. I don't know if they exist in reality.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a nice idea, right?
Yeah, those nice old charcoal.
It kind of ties in with the black car a little bit later that George Stark drives around in.
Ooh, interesting. Yeah.
So he has these headaches and he finally goes to the doctor.
This doctor's like flashing a light in his eye. I'm like, are you trying to give this kid an epileptic seizure? Like, what are you doing? Does this hurt? Does this hurt?
Flash to a scene where they're giving him open brain surgery. So
Woo, yeah. Well, is that what they did back in 91?
Let's open up his head and see what's going on in here.
This kid has got headaches. So, yeah, let's open him up and see what's going on back there.
This visual will always
This is
stick with
brutal.
me.
This is brutal. This was a turn off for my wife. She was just like, yeah, I'm out.
So they open up his head. They're looking around in his brain to see what's in there, and an eye opens and looks at them from inside of his brain.
An eyeball.
So the doctor's like, oh, he must have been a twin that absorbed the other in the womb. And this is the leavings of his twin.
Teeth. It had teeth.
Yeah.
It had an eyeball and teeth. Well, the good news is we figured out your headache.
Yeah.
The bad news is you got a brother.
So you can only assume that they removed the eyeball and the teeth and everything else.
You would think so. That leaves a pretty large cavity in the middle of your brain.
And it also leaves a lot of space in the casket because his parents actually buried the twin. You find out.
You just put it in a mason jar. But that nurse immediately like vomits, and I'm like, what are you doing in an emergency room here if you can't even handle that?
Well, what the doctor calls her out, nurse. The head nurse calls her out. Get yourself together.
Yes. Yep. Get yourself together.
You should have said that to your wife.
That's right. You stick it out, woman. Or I'll force you to watch Argylle. The only thing missing was the doctor eating a ham sandwich while he was doing the surgery.
Right, yeah, and it's falling into his brain cavity,
right,
his open brain cavity.
So this right off the bat is very disturbing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this nurse that can't handle it runs out and runs into another room, and that's when she sees all the birds flying by the window, which is obviously an homage visually to Hitchcock's The Birds. Even the noise of the birds made me think of that movie that they used here.
Yeah. The high-pitched squeaky.
So 23 years later, 1991, and Thad is now Timothy Hutton, and he is a teacher. And of course, has twins of his own. Because, it runs in the family.
Yeah, no, that was actually a nice little detail right there. It's like, of course, that tracks. Yeah.
And he likes to talk about duality. Of course, I'm sure this is all this guy talks about, right, to his students.
Right, correct.
He's talking about duality again. Come on.
Here we go.
Yep.
Next thing you know, he's going to be talking about the black and white cookie.
So it's kind of like, it's almost reminiscent of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where you see him in the opening scene after this flurry of action in the beginning. You see him in his normal surroundings as a teacher.
I'm pretty sure Henry Jones Jr. never had a twin in his brain.
In his brain, that would be some revelation.
That would have been. That'd be Dial of Destiny right there.
We call the twin Indiana.
I like it. Spielberg, get on it.
There's your headline for today's episode. But this guy shows up after his class is over. Actually, he's an interloper. He's sitting listening.
He's sitting in the class.
Yeah.
Right. So now this is where he's talking about George Stark and Alexis Machine. Is this where we get that, or no? That talk comes later.
No, this is where we get it because this guy has sussed out that Thad Beaumont writes pulp, trashy novels as George Stark to make some money because he can't make any money on the Thad Beaumont highbrow stuff that he writes normally. So he had to create this pseudonym, George Stark, to actually make some money.
This is where, so obviously this was around the time that King was outed as being Richard Bachman.
Yeah, I think when The Dark Half came out, he had already been established that King was Richard Bachman.
Okay. But they make it like this guy's looking to blackmail him. And they're like all up in arms. It's not like you murdered somebody. You wrote a book under another name. Many, many famous people have done this.
Right. Although in this scenario, George Stark is like a very popular author. So it can be understood that the publisher might take umbrage to that coming out.
I'm like, did anybody decide that they weren't going to publish Mark Twain anymore because they found out it was Samuel Clemens?
Well,
whoa.
In King's case, Richard Bachman, I think, nobody knew because nobody bought Richard Bachman. Nobody cared, right? But if you said that Stephen King didn't exist and was made up, I think people would be pissed off. Think of it that way. I don't know.
That's a news item. That's J.K. Rowling actually wrote. Agatha Christie's even written under different names. Mm-hmm. I just didn't see what the big deal was. Like that had to go. This was like going to destroy his world.
Obviously, Thad himself didn't. He thought it through, right? And he said, "I'm just going to go public with this."
Right. But again, it's like he's not showing up at these book readings and reading I guess just nobody knew who George Stark was.
The book jacket was like this completely fabricated guy that looked like
A photo that they probably did. Well, they didn't pull it off Google, but they probably right.
deep mustache, looked like Magnum PI or something.
He was a good looking guy. I want to read his books. And there was a point where I was like, now I want to read one of these George Stark novels because
Right.
they're sounding pretty salacious.
What struck me though is when he calls his publisher, and the guy that he calls looks like Scarface. He's got like a silk shirt that's open to the sternum.
This is what agents look like back in the night. Book agents. Yo, you know what we got to do? We got to kill him.
Say hello to my little friend.
Correct.
George Stark. Yeah. Amy Madigan plays his wife, Liz Beaumont.
She looked like Bonnie Hunt.
Yeah, she always looks like she's deeply. I don't think I've ever seen her happy in a movie. She always looks deeply concerned in every scene that she's in.
Well, he basically leaves her to deal with those twins every day.
Right, true, yeah.
That's gonna wear on you.
But you find out that when through most of her exposition, mostly, is that when he does crank out one of these George Stark novels, he becomes a different person, like a person that she doesn't like.
George Stark sounds like a real ass.
Yeah. And it turns out that he is. It turns out that he really is.
You're smoking, you're drinking, you're belligerent.
You're killing people.
Right? So this is where it gets a little bizarre.
So
but yeah, first we have to kill him.
Yeah, as you say, the publisher decides to capitalize on this by making it like a press thing. So they call People magazine to come and actually stage a funeral.
Which is weird. You're announcing that this was but he's still this is his bread and butter. Why would you kill this character? It just doesn't make any. Just reveal it that I'm writing under a pseudonym. People apparently like this world that he's created.
Right.
Keep it up. I don't know. Sell the rights to somebody so they can start making these books.
Mm-hmm. So the interesting thing here, though, is that when he writes as George, I guess he doesn't use the pencils when he writes as Thad, but when he writes as George, the old pencils come out.
And you'll notice it later in the movie. George is left-handed.
Ah, yeah.
When they're sitting at the desk together, they have this write-off.
So it's like a mirror. So it's a mirror.
Yeah, no, literally, yeah. So this People magazine photographer Donaldson.
I'm like, this guy's just babbling the entire time. This guy is like camera.
He doesn't make any sense. I'm going to do you a brown. Like, what does that even mean?
Well, that's typical King. King always comes up with these weird. I don't know if they're actual like main area sayings.
Oh, it could be right because he's like, hate any kind of folderol. I'm like, wow, I haven't heard that word since ever.
And then the guy's just babbling on about how he takes pictures of teddy bears and coffins and
weird.
So the guy is like borderline annoying already.
Yes, correct. Yeah, you're kind of like, all right, he needs to die.
And so he's the first victim of the actual George Stark, because at 1 a.m., what he's doing driving at 1 a.m., I forget, but...
And there was somebody in the post office at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
Who's working the post office at 1 a.m.?
You can't even get anybody in my post office at 2 p.m.
Right. And as we're introduced to that Digger and Homer, who are the two kind of yokums that are, So he runs it. He sees somebody on the side of the road. Hey, that looks like, and he goes to pick him up, and all of a sudden he gets accosted. He gets dragged out of the truck,
leaves his leg hanging on the door of the truck, and then we've got Michael Rooker as the sheriff here.
He looks about 12 years old in this movie.
As Sheriff Alan Pangborn. Now this is interesting because talk about a shared universe. That this character shows up in other Stephen King books. The sheriff.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But not played by Rooker? Or
not played by... in the books, he's been in a movie, another movie, I think, Needful Things, if I'm not mistaken. But
which also takes place, I think, in the same town.
But in that, he's played by Ed Harris and not Michael Rooker.
Well, they look identical.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is probably the worst sheriff in the world.
He's the most lenient, the most believing sheriff in the world.
Holy crap, dude. Do your job.
At the end, he says, I can't believe I've done this up to this point. I'm like, yeah, neither can I.
No one can. This movie would have been over 40 minutes ago if you just arrested him.
So once they're actually the next day investigating the death of this photographer, it's established that George Stark came back to the truck, took the guy's leg off the door, and beat him to
Beat him.
death with it.
That's
And,
brutal.
and not only that, but there's a hole in the ground where they had the photo shoot, where they buried, quote unquote, George Stark. There's a hole in the ground, and the caretaker insists that it looks like somebody's crawled out of it because there's handprints all around the outside of the hole, which the sheriff dismisses immediately.
Yeah.
And if there's a criticism to this movie, and reviews of the time actually called this out as well, is that the movie doesn't really explain that well what
No,
George Stark is.
There's because the movie, I think, tries to give you multiple versions of what he is, and none of them land. They just stuck with the idea that he was somehow a manifest, like somehow Thad had manifested this thing, just created him. Because at one point they're implying that it's the twin. I'm like, it was just an eyeball.
Yeah.
Like, how does it
or
become...
that the twin, some entity like latched itself onto the spirit of the twin and I don't know.
Yeah, no.
All these theories are thrown out as to what he is, but it's not ever solidified.
And this is where I think the movie fails, because you don't get a clear answer of what this thing is. And so it doesn't make sense.
Which is kind of par for the course with King, because it's really set up to be like a nightmare scenario where it doesn't need to make sense to be scary. And it's actually more scary the less sense that it makes. So I'll give it some leeway there. Okay. Some theories, and then let me, make up my own mind on what is going on.
Right. Did you see where they found Homer's truck?
No.
It was in Salem's car lot. No. Stupid.
Don't.
Thank you.
I saw this in the theater back in 1993.
Yep.
I was one of the few, apparently, because it didn't even make its budget back.
Another Argylle.
And I've only seen it a handful of times since then. But one of the visuals that always has stayed with me is the first nightmare that Thad has, where he comes home and his wife is like bound like to a chair, and he finds her face is all porcelain.
That's actually a really good image. And it's playing the Elvis Presley song, "Are You Lonesome Tonight?"
Yeah. And I also commend the movie for actually getting the rights to play that actual Elvis version and not some garbage, cover of it. Yeah,
because I'll tell you, Argylle, the ads always ran the Elvis Suspicious Minds, and yet it's not in the movie at all.
Yeah. But so Amy Madigan's face is completely like a porcelain doll.
Yeah, you're right. That's a nice visual. There's a couple nice visual graphics going on in here.
Yeah. And then the next death, if I'm not mistaken, is the blackmailer, because Thad goes a little bit George Stark on the blackmailer by telling him that he will shove his appendage in his mouth after he kills him.
Yeah.
Which said, it was just a joke. I'm like, yeah, that's a joke I always tell.
Correct. And then he admits it to the sheriff.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, what were you doing in New York? Oh, I was there seeing my agent, and that's where this guy was killed.
Yep.
Oh, it wasn't me. Well, we found your fingerprints. What? Right then and there, you take him in.
And it's written in the guy's blood on the wall, "The sparrows are flying again." So the birds
fly now. Also, Rocky comes in.
So the birds are kind of like harbingers of doom.
Yeah, because I literally wrote in my notes, I don't get the bird connection.
So maybe you could take the leap that they're bringing George Stark back into this reality, and they're also the ones that have to get rid of him at the end, because that is what happens at the end.
So they regurgitate him in the beginning to make him whole?
Perhaps. I don't know.
Oh, no. But Clausen's dead. He's disgustingly ripped apart. Yeah, his member is shoved into his mouth. The cops are over there. They find him losing their lunch. And the landlord is like, "This lost asshole owes me money." Like she wasn't fazed at all by what was going on. So yeah, victim number 2, Fred Clausen.
And the publisher's ex-wife gets killed at one point in a very horrific scene when she's on the phone as he's doing it and he's slashing her
Miriam,
face.
right? Miriam.
Yep. Hmm.
Yeah. Does anybody even know what a busy signal is anymore?
No, nobody
Yeah, it's like,
should.
what's this phone making noise for? Yeah. Was the sheriff's son watching Beast from 20,000 Fathoms? I
Was
couldn't
he?
tell what the monster movie was he was watching,
Oh.
and I didn't see it in the credit.
And then the people author, the author of the article gets killed, who's the bald guy with the ponytail. And you think to yourself, I would love to see that because that's just an annoying visual right there. This bald guy with a ponytail.
And he does cut his ponytail
He
off.
does,
Though.
yeah.
But that's silly because the guy's in the hallway and it's the worst. Like he's falling all over the place. He can't get to his door. He's fumbling with his keys. And I'm like, you're a buffoon. You need to die. And then the cops come up in the elevator. George just walks the other way. Hey, who's that down there? Oh, I don't know. Come on, let's go check this out. Like, these are the most inept cops. At one point, they take the guy back to his hotel room and they open the door, look around. Oh, well, I guess those other two cops who were supposed to be protecting you left. And meanwhile, they're slaughtered in the shower. All you had to do was walk in the room.
So by this point, Thad has been contacted because I think it's Thad that he calls when he's killing Miriam on the phone. Thad has been contacted by George Stark, and he's trying to tell the sheriff this. And the sheriff kind of halfway believes him, but he's like, it's not George Stark. It's just some crazy guy that's doing this, even though it's your fingerprints.
Yeah, correct. I have a description. He kind of looks like me. He's my height. He has different eye colors, though. Oh, well, that clearly can't be you then. And I'm just going to say right now, twins do not share the same fingerprint. Physically impossible.
So is this supposed to be his twin? I don't know.
Right. Or some kind of an evil entity that he somehow manifested because he wished him into existence. Yeah.
But what George actually wants to do, what George is back to do, is to get Thad to write another George Stark novel. Because if Thad,
just one more chapter.
If Thad doesn't write George Stark books, then this thing can't exist anymore. So this entity or whatever it is.
So he's been chilling out. As long as he was writing those books, this thing just existed.
In some other plane or some other dimension?
I don't know.
Because not only does George Stark itself come back as a physical being, but the car exists as a physical car.
You can't buy a car unless you stole it.
Yeah,
like it's physically killing people. So it's alive. He's making phone calls.
And then like the doctor that did the operation on Thad in 1968 is still alive and tells Thad all because apparently his parents never told him that they took out an eyeball from his head. Or
when does that come up in conversation?
Yeah.
You know, it's one thing when you sit your kid down at 16, you're like, yeah, you're adopted. It's another thing when they're like, so you know those headaches you used to get? Remember how you always wanted a brother?
George is systematically killing all these people that tried to stifle him, I think, is what he's viewing it as.
I don't know.
Because the publishers went ahead with this whole let's kill George Stark as a media ploy. He killed the photographer. He killed the author of the article. He killed the doctor who took out the eye to begin with.
Which makes you think that this is somehow that it inhabited that. I don't know.
And the longer that Thad does not write another George Stark book, George himself
starts to fall apart.
So his face is all coming apart.
This is pretty. And Timothy Hutton is playing both of these characters. And the first couple times I saw him, I'm like, is that him? Like, he does a really good job of kind of playing this Clark Kent evil Superman time. But
it's a great makeup job because it looks like it does and it doesn't look like Timothy.
Yeah, no, it's actually very impressive. And I mean, listen, you get to the end game there and they're both in the same room. You're obviously employing every Freaky Friday, Parent Trap trick that you can had the same actor in the room playing two different parts, but it's pretty seamless. I mean, it's obvious now, when they cut to the back of somebody, it's a stand-in. But he plays them two completely different ways, and it's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I found it funny that he basically challenges them to a short story competition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, you write a story. You write. Let's go. Okay. No, you're the writer.
Because it has to come down to, a mano a mano kind of confrontation because it's been
Right.
building to that all through because George has been avoiding Thad pretty much, just killing everybody around him.
Until he abducts his wife and kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the only exposition you really get about what George might be from any kind of voice of authority is that, what is it, a fellow teacher that's always smoking a
Oh, what's
pipe?
her name? Yeah, yeah. She
Yeah.
was like a real Pepe Le Pew. Reggie. She was like
Mm.
this wacky witch doctor
So
professor.
what she says is that Stark was created by the force of your will, an entity that used your dead twin to exist.
So so if they buried this thing, it still manifested into a full human being. So did
That
he have a life prior? Like it just, or
if you
did it
think
just
about it, it existed.
I'm trying
It
to
existed in Thad's head prior, whenever
right.
he would write a George Stark novel, and then once George Stark died, in that fake funeral, then it became its own thing.
Then all of a sudden it's
Yeah.
like, whoa, 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 because they're clearly connected, and he's got this weird schizophrenic relationship with this thing, and they keep cutting to that, like you said, with the Elvis song, and having these confrontations in his head. But she also misses. This is also where that lady mentions that sparrows are psychopomps, and there's some weird connection between the birds, like you said, whether they're heralding him in or somehow giving him power. It doesn't. There's a
Mm.
lot of unanswered questions.
Thad keeps saying throughout the movie that Stark can't hurt me because he needs me
He
to
needs me,
exist.
right?
But
They
that's
fight.
not true because if Stark writes himself, then he doesn't need Thad to exist because
But it was clear. It was clear that he couldn't write though.
once they start going head to head, Stark starts to write and he
Yeah,
starts healing while Thad starts deteriorating.
yeah,
So it's revealed that, yeah, so if Stark takes over as the writer, he doesn't need Thad.
yeah. I'm like, can't you just wish him away?
But they start to fight, after this writing one-on-one breaks down, they start to fight. George fights dirty, as we all know that he
Well,
would.
why wouldn't he?
Yeah. And one of the kids, because George at one point he kicks Thad in the nethers, right? They cut to the twins, and one of them says, "Uh-oh," like,
Oh, we got to put that in. That's
yeah.
hysterical. Yeah, yeah. Daddy's dying right now. Uncle George is going to take you for a
Yes.
car ride later.
So very symbolically, or not, however you want to look at it, Thad stabs Stark with one of the Black Beauty pencils,
Yeah.
and then as all this fight is happening, the birds are circling the house and trying to get in because they're there to take George back to
And
wherever he came
this
from.
is pretty impressive. And again, they like I said, they employ every trick in the book with these birds, whether they're using um, fake or in some shots where they had the birds pecking, they were bird heads molded over hammers.
And in some of these long shots, it's actual birds that they let loose
Yes.
through the set. But obviously, when they're birds circling George Stark's
Yeah.
body, that's all,
Yeah, like you said, there was 4,500 cutthroat finches. They're not sparrows, they're finches. But these things were consuming 100 pounds of birdseed and 15 gallons of water on a daily basis.
This is the benefit of a large budget that
Yeah.
Romero has for this movie. I'm sure he wouldn't be able to do that in one of his standard films. But yeah, the birds eat up Stark like literally before your eyes. Like they eat
They're
him
like
down to a
bloodthirsty
skeleton.
sparrows,
Yeah.
which gets rid of all the evidence. Okay, go ahead.
Rooker sees it. So that's
But he
where
also, well, it's his word against all the other people who dead. No, this guy didn't do it. I'm telling you, it was this made up guy
and
that
the
came
birds
out of his
carried him
head.
away. Yeah.
The birds ate him, but this guy's fingerprints still match. That's not going to hold up in court.
No, but somehow it does because it's
Well,
a
we don't
happy
know.
ending. Yeah.
Well, we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know what happens after the credits. All right, I'm gonna have to take you in. What? You just saw the? Yeah, no one's gonna believe me.
The movie, even at the time, kind of got the brush off. It was forgotten pretty quickly because this was, a couple months later, Jurassic Park came out and everybody
Oh,
forgot
that
about
is true.
anything.
That is true.
It was released in April of '93 on a 15 million budget. It made 10 back at the box office. So not a hit for George or Timothy Hutton, who was really After Ordinary People. I always mix
Yeah.
up Timothy Hutton and Robbie Benson for some reason. They're like the
Oh,
same
yeah.
person for me. Apparently Hutton was very difficult to work with, according to Romero, and he walked off set for a number of days because of an argument with Romero.
Was he playing George at the time?
Maybe he was. Maybe he was
Maybe
doing he
it
was
was
method.
method. It was
But he was
method.
good. He's very good in this role.
No, I
Roles.
mean, yeah, it's kind of sad that you don't see him in a lot of other stuff because I thought he did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we could have had whenever you see that other actors that were considered for the role, you never know if they were actually approached or if their names just came up like in the boardroom. But Willem Dafoe was considered.
Okay.
I think obviously he could play a great maniac, but maybe he'd be less convincing as the normal guy.
Right.
And Gary Oldman was considered as well.
Hmm.
And this was pre-Dracula, so he still wasn't like a star at that point, like 1990 around then.
Right.
So he would have been good, I think. He would have been very good in this. But Timothy Hutton, I think, had this nice guy image
Yeah. No. Yeah.
where he
Like
could
I said,
nicely play against type.
he's really, yeah. Like I said, it's a very Clark Kent, evil Superman kind of take on both of these. Because he really is a kind of a doofy guy in his Thad role.
Yeah.
He's just, I just want to make some money and I just want to do the right thing and protect my family. And
And again, just for the eye-opening in the brain visual alone, I think this deserves a place in cinema history.
Well, the special effects on the back end when the birds are tearing this George apart is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
It's pretty well put together, this special effects.
A little long, just like our first movie today. It's over 2 hours long. I think it's 2 hours and 2 minutes.
Which is amazing for a movie back then.
Yeah. I think that it easily could have been like an hour 40 without losing too much. But even with that, I would go 3.25 for the dark half, 3.25 buckets out of 5.
Okay. I'm going to go 3.
Okay.
Yeah. Even with all the questions on what this thing really was or who George was, just you're along for the ride.
Yeah.
So I did see there was a movie tie-in adventure game. It was a video game.
Yeah, it was one of those old school CD-ROM games
Yeah, the
for your
MS-DOS.
computer. It probably wasn't even CD-ROM at that time. It was probably like a floppy disk,
Yeah,
right?
it said MS-DOS, so
Yeah.
I don't know what MS stands for, but yeah, it was pre.
Microsoft?
Yeah, 92. It doesn't say. I don't have it in my notes, but that it was loosely follows the plot of the movie. So were you running around killing people?
I don't know.
If it's based on the plot of the movie.
It did say that the game fell into obscurity almost immediately, so who knows where you can get your hands on it.
Yeah, it's probably in the landfill with all those ET games.
Exactly. I'm sure even if you did get it, you wouldn't be able to play it because who has a drive anymore for that?
Oh, there's nerds out there who still have their Commodore 64s.
You think do they have like floppy disk drives you can connect by USB to your laptop?
My daughter's girlfriend actually is one of these tech nerds that'll go to like a secondhand store and find one of these old keyboards or computers and get it up and running.
No.
Just for, I don't know. Maybe you're going to play Oregon Trail. I don't know. Don't die of dysentery. That was entertainment back in the day. Gosh, it's amazing how far we've come.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was definitely something I was not even on my horizon. I knew nothing about it. So, and it's a nice tie-in with Argylle.
Yeah.
The duality of these writers and characters.
Nice to see it again. Definitely nice to see it again. Okay, so what else did we do this week?
Oh, let's see. I have 2 items I brought to the table. One of which I think you and I talked about, but not on the show, which was on my plane ride home from Aruba. I watched The Holdovers.
Okay. And I saw that as well. I saw it on Peacock. Yeah.
Yep. Paul Giamatti, directed by Alexander Payne. They worked together on Sideways back in 2004. It's interesting because, it's implied that it's shot to look like it was filmed in 1970s. It takes place in 70s. sometimes the translation gets a little lost on those little screens in front of me on the plane, you know. But I thought it was very interesting. I mean, you basically have, it comes down to these three characters, these three, I don't know, broken souls, I guess, for lack of a better term, and that they're forced to kind of spend Christmas together. I thought it was interesting. Paul Giamatti is just amazing to me.
Yeah, he's great. I think more people would enjoy it if it didn't have the Oscar stigma attached to it because it might be seen by some as a very highbrow movie. It's
It's
not.
not.
Yeah.
It's not at all. I mean, his character is I don't want to say a piece of crap, but he's a very they're troubled. Every one of these characters is flawed.
But it's very
Um,
funny. It's broad humor
yeah,
in
no,
a lot of cases. So it could have a shot if it does win Oscar awards, at least for maybe Best Actor, because he's
right.
deserving of that. And he is right with Cillian Murphy, I think the front runner for Best Actor this
Best
year.
actor. Well, I think
Um,
Cillian Murphy's going to walk away with that. I think Oppenheimer's going to
and
clean up here.
probably that's got the most momentum going into the award.
Right.
Yeah. If
Yeah, I
they,
was going to say it kind of popped out of theaters pretty quickly. I was surprised it was even on my plane options.
right. Yeah.
So, and like you said, it's on Peacock.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. It was a fun little study of these three characters.
I still haven't watched Barbie yet. Have you?
No, I have not. Nope, it was available on the plane as well, and I was like, I did watch Mission Impossible 7.
I've lost track of Mission
Yeah,
Impossible.
and of course it's one big setup for the second part. But it's like, you read reviews and people are like, oh, it's the greatest action movie ever made. And I'm like, well, again, something is clearly lost on a tiny little screen in front of me on a plane traveling 35,000 miles an hour. We don't fly that fast. So, but I also wanted to bring up, because we had mentioned this on a previous episode, the Cineverse app is now available. And this is what we talked about that has the Sid and Marty Krofft channel on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I downloaded it. It's free. I guess there's a paid version, but I don't know if that's without, I think it's $5 a month without ads. I will say I watched a couple Land of the Lost episodes and it's a little wonky. It cut out of me a couple times and I did read that somebody complained that on certain computer platforms it will the ads run over the show while it's still running.
Really?
Yeah, so I don't know if that's there's some issues they need to resolve. They're not cleaned up. The shows it looks exactly like it did back in
Well,
1972.
it does, with the exception of HR Puff and stuff. It looks like they were all shot like on videotape, all these shows,
They
right?
probably were because they were
Yeah.
so low budget. But I will tell you, so the first episode of Land of the Lost, there is a shot where it's Will and Holly hiding behind a rock, and they're watching Chaka and two other of these cavemen characters. And behind them is clearly a claymation forest, and then there's like a sunset, and then the T-Rex comes in, and this is all one composite shot. And it's not perfect, but I'm telling you, it sold, what you were looking at for back in the day. That's a pretty impressive composite right there.
Yeah, and I, as a kid, you don't think to yourself, this looks like garbage.
No,
You know,
no. I mean, we knew they were claymation, and but it doesn't. I mean, that's half the charm of it. That's
Yeah.
watching Godzilla with Man in the Suit.
yeah.
So they have pretty much everything. The only thing I couldn't find was the Brady Bunch Variety Hour and Bigfoot and Wild Boy.
Oh, yeah.
They actually have the Croft Super Show on there.
Do they with the horror hotel with
I haven't watched it yet. I haven't watched but the Bay City Roller Show is on there, so they
Yep.
must have gotten rights to a lot of the
To all that
songs and
stuff.
stuff that were going on.
And look for those few episodes of the Croft Super Show where they broadcast from that amusement park
Oh,
that lasted
okay, yes.
for 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah, that still fascinates me to no end.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these shows are available on other platforms, but hopefully they'll get their act together, clean this stuff up a little bit. But at least, I mean, you're talking Land of the Lost, Lidsville, Sigmund and the Sea Monsters, HR Puff and stuff, that show and the movie, Dr. Shrinker, Electro Woman and Diner Girl, Far Out Space Nuts, Bay City Roller Show, Bugaloos, Croft Super Show, and The Lost Saucer.
Okay.
So
All right.
there's a lot of stuff on there.
That's pretty much all of them. That I
Yeah.
can't remember any others.
No, well, I only when I saw it, Dr. Shrinker, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. Otherwise,
Yeah.
I would, and that was Billy Barty
Yeah.
was on there. So,
Well, he was in most of them, right?
well, I
He
was gonna
was,
say he probably did show up in a lot. If he
yeah.
wasn't on, on screen and as a human, he was probably in a costume somewhere.
Right.
So, but yeah, Cineverse app is out there now.
All right. I'll have to look for that.
Yeah. So
I just got a quick one for what else I
Okay.
did. The new season of Curb Your Enthusiasm has started.
is this the last?
That's what he says, but he said that for like the last 2 seasons, I think.
Oh,
as well.
really? Okay.
But
Still on HBO?
still on HBO. You
Okay.
can see it on Max. They're coming out weekly rather than dropping the whole season. Now, I'm a huge Seinfeld fan, so I love, it's just like one or the other. This is like Seinfeld with the F-bomb in it. That's basically what Curb Your
Okay.
Enthusiasm is. But I was very interested to see because Jeff Garland, who plays Larry's agent throughout the series, I was very interested to see if he would be back because, as we know, there were some accusations on the set of the Goldbergs, another show that he's on.
Yeah, which they killed him off.
Yeah, and he was taken off that show. I'm like, well, is he going to be on Curb? He is here. So
Okay.
I always loved his character on Curb. So this is obviously they didn't feel like they needed to get rid of him off of this production. And again, we brought this up earlier where can you separate yourself from an actor and his character? So I always thought he was funny. He's funny in the first episode. So
Okay. Yeah, I do like him a lot.
And
I
of
really
course, he's the captain from Wall-E.
Yes, true.
You can never forget
Among
that.
other. That's right.
So there you have it. What are we doing next?
Oh, we are going back to the theater and we're actually hitting the MCU. Well, adjacent.
Sort of. Is this even the Spider-Verse, though? These movies from Sony are just weird. They're
just throwing them out there and hoping that something sticks.
They have to really come to the realization eventually that nobody cares about Morbius. Nobody cares.
They paid to keep the rights for those characters, and
use them in Spider-Man movies. Just come out with more Spider-Man movies. That's what you got to do.
Well, that's another one too. The Kraven the Hunter. That's still set to come.
I'm convinced that none of these movies are going to do well at the box office because if you don't have Spider-Man, nobody wants to see Kraven the Hunter. And
correct. If you're not having, that's like Venom. I mean, we all know how Venom ties directly into Spider-Man, but somehow that first movie worked to the point where they made a second movie.
So I have very low expectations for Madam Web, which is our main.
Well, you should raise your expectations because it has 100% Rotten Tomatoes rating right now.
How can that? Nobody's seen it yet.
I know that's probably why. Somebody was touting that, and I'm like, that's because there's probably been no reviews yet.
Yeah,
it should start at 0 and work your way
up.
But
as we always say, the best way to go into a movie is with no expectations. So I could be pleasantly surprised. Who knows? They did themselves no favors by causing that whole brouhaha with what universe did these things take place in, with the Vulture showing up at the end of Morbius, and
that kind of ruined it because it just leads more questions.
First of all, like I said, if there's no Spider-Man, who would really care about these characters? And add to the fact that now that these aren't even in a universe where Spider-Man exists. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on here.
I guess we'll find out.
Yeah. Do
we set ourselves up for failure?
Or
are we going to be miserable?
Maybe we will. I
think next week you may come in mad.
No, I won't, because we have a humdinger of a second feature next
This is actually a pretty good parody right here.
Yes.
Yeah.
So again, this is only something we could do since Christina is not here, since she has a very severe arachnophobia. So we are doubling down on spiders next week. We have Madam Web, and we're going to pair that with maybe the mother of all spider movies.
Ooh.
Am I misspeaking when I say that?
No, I think you are absolutely on point right there.
Kingdom of the Spiders.
William Shatner.
With Captain Kirk himself.
We have not spoken about the Shat.
No.
On this show at all.
We have never taken a shat on this show.
We are going where no man has gone before. I just hope we don't shat all over it.
Oh no, I hope not.
No.
But let me just tell you, don't watch the Riff Tracks or Mystery Science Theater version.
No.
Watch the original.
Watch the original.
Yeah.
The way we intended. The way it was intended.
Yep.
Well, you can bring a joke or two.
Madam Web, Kingdom of the Spiders.
I like it.
Yeah.
Spiders. Here we go. All right.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Yes, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
If you like what you just heard, be sure to follow TMI Confessionals of the Nerd Kind on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or whatever you listen to your favorite podcasts on.
You can also find us on all of the socials, Instagram and Twitter at TMI_podcast 2018. We're on Facebook and YouTube as well. Just look for the Popcorn Bucket.
You can help support this show by visiting our TeePublic page for some TMI branded goodies such as hoodies, t-shirts, mugs, and stickers. tpublic.com/TMI Confessionals, all one word.
A 5-star review would be incredibly nice as well.
Thanks again for listening. We truly appreciate you. Be sure to come back next week. We'll save some popcorn for you.
I take it home. I put it in little Ziploc bags, and it goes in my lunchbox. And I eat my popcorn, or it gets put in a Ziploc bag, gets put in a goodie drawer, and you forget about it. And like 3 weeks later, you're like, oh, this has got to go. And then the birds have a field day. So
and then they all die about 20 minutes later.
they're all like choking on the butter. I'm like,